But I would also say it's so important in accepting feedback, but also in just taking time to understand your own strengths and weaknesses. And then recognizing that like weaknesses doesn't mean failure. It means like we all have gaps, and it's better to acknowledge those weaknesses and then build a team or a coalition of other folks behind you and with you to work, and not to be and to always be willing and not to be stubborn to giving up power to those who might have a better ability to function in a space. And I also think it's just so vital that as leaders, we understand ourselves and our own positionalities. You know, my experiences as a white woman are always going to impact my experiences, but also the way I act towards others. And I need to acknowledge that. And we all need to understand our own positionalities in order to be successful leaders. And in both ways, and also understanding, you know, how as women, we might face barriers that other folks, such, you know, men might not face in certain spaces. But how do we overcome those without understanding them first, and understanding our own ways, and then understanding ourselves and our strengths and how we can use those to overcome those things. So yes, all of that. And just, finally, just adaptability and flexibility to this, not just with our projects, but also to the rooms we are in. Being in different spaces is vital. You have to be able to, you know, as a student, when I'm listening to other students about their ideas, I can't act the same way I'm going to act in a room with the president of the college, or with a politician, or with my parents. It's always got to be different, and we have to be adaptable, but maintain in our truths and our convictions at the end of the day.
Yes, thank you, Abby. And so our second question for a second group is, what are some of the things that have helped you in your journey of being a leader? And did you have any setbacks, and how did you overcome them? So for Neke, Tori, Esther, Joanne, and Rami.
I'll hop in first just because what I was thinking for this question segues nicely from what Abby and Sajana were talking about, reflecting on your own leadership style and your own skills and everything like that. I think for me, that's helped me move forward and become a stronger leader, is that just as part of my job, I often end up going back and doing kind of leadership inventories and some reflective work. And that gives me a lot of opportunities to reassess who I am as a leader, which is continually changing. So I feel like I that's really helped me, knowing who I am in that role, and being able to recognize that changes, and recognize where there are some things that I might need improvement on. Those have all been really helpful for me. And another thing I'll say before, you know, I want to hear from everybody. I've found that I've grown as a leader when I'm willing to open up to, or own up to my mistakes, right? I know we all make mistakes. None of us are perfect, as someone has already said. And being able to recognize where I make a mistake and say, yep, okay, maybe that wasn't the right way to do it. Maybe I need to change my approach for next time, has been really valuable. I've really learned a lot, being able to accept that I'm not perfect and I make these mistakes, and recognize where those mistakes are.
Yeah, I think these are all excellent answers to so many questions. And, you know, I think the most important thing is to listen to yourself, to listen to your passions about what's really important to you, so that you can be authentic, because that's the first thing that people will see right through you. That if you're not putting forward something, I mean, if you want to be a true leader, that's the really important quality, is to be authentic. And to speak your passion and to act on it, and to try different things. If something doesn't work, don't be afraid to take a different avenue, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because people want to follow a true leader. People want to follow someone that really believes in what you're doing and what you believe in. And if listening, like others have said, is so important, because if you hear something that resonates with you and your passion, then you'll want to join up with them. So building coalitions and building new friendships, and don't be afraid to try to build new circles of people around you. So taking new risks too, by meeting new people, building new networks, because you never know who you're going to run across, that maybe somebody has a better idea than you do, believe it or not, and that you'll want to take that avenue instead of the avenue that you've been pursuing to follow that dream or to follow that passion of yours and to achieve that goal that you've been trying to achieve. Somebody might have another way to get there. I think that it's really important to not just have an ideological passion, but to have a plan, to have a plan. Just don't have, like, I remember when our governor has talked a lot about, and I'm so glad some of you are involved in Black Lives Matter and all of us and all these issues, because they're not just national issues, they're local issues. And the governor has challenged every municipality around the state to come up with a better way, but don't just talk about it. We need a plan. And that's the first thing he said, is challenge the communities to say, get involved with your constituents. We want to have input from the constituents on these plans. But then he's challenging the constituents too, right? To say, don't just protest about you don't like something. Come up with an agenda that you want your legislators to act on. So it's just so interesting to me to say, okay, we're not just holding up signs, we're not just saying what we don't like, but instead we're taking that energy and saying, what changes specifically, tangible changes do we want to see happen? So I think a true leader comes up with tangible ideas that we can act on, and ones that we can follow and enact and empower others to enact. So following and not taking, and the other thing I have found on my journey is you never take no. You don't ever accept a no. When I was mayor and others didn't want to do what I wanted to do, then you just find an, or when I was supervisor, the joke was that, my colleagues would say to me, she wasn't ever appointed to that big committee or something that she wanted to be on, so she just started her own committee. And they were right. I never took no as an answer. I just found another way to accomplish the same goal. So don't ever let anybody tell you no. Just keep pursuing it and just find a different way to accomplish what you want to see done. So I think that's really important too. And then don't, again, as I said before, just keep trusting your instincts and listen to the patterns that are happening. So you'll hear it again and again. And if you keep hearing it and keep feeling it, you know you're onto something. And then don't ever let it go.
I'll jump in. I think part of it has already been kind of said before, but I think two big things that I took away from the question are, at least in my experience, it's definitely helped to have the guidance of people who occupied like these positions before me. So I think while everyone has different ways of approaching leadership, there's always a lesson to be learned from sharing experiences with other people who are in similar, like who occupy similar positions of leadership, and then adapting any lessons that are relevant to my own personal journey. But as well, I think being able to create a community around leadership positions, because ultimately leadership is about teamwork. And while being a leader is about taking charge and making decisions and being like the forefront of like a group or a position or whatever, I think it also helps to have people who can support you as a leader and people who you can also bounce ideas with. So being able to have that community around whatever positions you occupy is something that definitely has helped, at least in my experience.
I'll tackle this question, I guess, the other way first, starting with the second half of the question that asked about setbacks, just because personally I know I've faced several setbacks, and I think my biggest one would be imposter syndrome. Just being a woman in male-dominated field, or being a Black woman in a very white, dominated field. I think that gets to me a lot of the time. And so how I overcome that and how I overcome that would be never losing sight of the goal, or using my team, like I said, to just bounce back ideas off, and also my mother, just because she's such a big source of motivation for me. And so I think Tori said it best when you were talking about how reflection is key, and just asking yourself like, oh, why are you here? How did you get here? I think those would be the biggest techniques that I use to get myself out of that run.
Okay. For Remy, do you want to add anything? If not, it's okay too.
Yeah, I would love to actually. Esther, thank you. I also hope everyone can hear me. Esther, thank you for what you said, because when it comes to, like, I was thinking about setbacks as well, and just thinking about, especially experience. There's such a, I believe when you look at leadership, you have to look at potential first, and it doesn't matter how much you've been able, how much opportunities you've had, or how many times you've been able to do something. But when you have that passion, that drive, that you want to see something happen in your community, a lot of times it's kind of like a pick up your boots and go for it. So when it comes to setbacks, the way I think about that as well is just if I want it really badly, like if I just have to learn how to get there, I can do that. Because for example, with SGA, I had no SGA, no student government experience at all. But it took a friend of mine being like, you got this, you can do this. And so now I've seen like the work that I've done and see how invested I am in my community. And so when I see new people get into SGA, I remind them all the time, I've only finished a year, while people think I've done it for all these years, and that only comes out of like passion. And I think that's the only thing you really need to be as successful as you want to.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you guys for sharing about what things have helped you on your journey. And so we want to take a little shift, and I'm going to ask the first group, what are the most rewarding aspects of being a leader?
For me, it's just empowering other folks to lead, especially women, you know, and really young girls, because it motivates me. I mean, I by no means am I like trying to become a teacher. I'm trying to become an attorney, but I love teaching kids just because, especially young women, and I teach math, which is not, you know, I have girls all the time tell me, I'm just bad at this because I'm a girl, or, oh, this is a boys class, or, oh, I'm here because I'm not a boy, you know, trying to get extra help. And I'm like, why am I your teacher then? You know, why am I here with you? Why are we doing this math? And having the opportunity to encourage them, and then see the success in their eyes and realize that you can teach them in a different way that is more centric for them. And it's just so incredible to see other people take on new steps in leadership. And then it just feels so good to break those stereotypes and break barriers when someone tells you you can't do something, you know, especially in male dominated fields. And I totally acknowledge my whiteness in this, and that I have a lot of privilege in that. But, you know, last year I was VP for financial affairs, and I didn't think twice about it when I ran about my gender affecting it, until I had some gentlemen at Skidmore question my ability to lead as a sophomore woman, being questioned about, you know, oh, you can handle all that money, oh, you know, that kind of thing, and really it being a gendered position and not realizing that, and then to be able to do it and feel like I did it better than the men before me was pretty good of a feeling. And then seeing, you know, women continue to be empowered by that and join the committee and then continue to step up to work is just incredible. So, you know, just to continue to motivate others is vital.
I think I'm quite a project-oriented person typically. So for me, like a typical answer to this question would be, you know, if we have a project and we get it done, that's what's rewarding. But I think being a leader at Skidmore has also showed me so much, like taught me so much about the community that we live in. And I'll just speak from my experience at Skidmore News. This year, when I took on the co-editorship position, it was the first year that we had an all-women editorial team in Skidmore News history. And it was also a big year for us in terms of pushing out a lot of big things. We had our first print edition in 10 years, but we also enhanced our reach on politics and started doing some hard reporting about injustices, specifically racial injustice. And that came with a lot of challenges because half of us are women of color. And the amount of hate that these women writers received just from the Saratoga town community was a lot that we had to deal with. And I think the hardship has made us grow stronger as a community and lean on each other, because it does sometimes feel that as a woman of color at Skidmore, it's easy to feel like you're sometimes all alone in dealing with a lot of things. And it's just sort of how the systems are in place. But having community and having a community of other women of color specifically, leaning on each other and relying on each other for just moral support and resources has been, and I've seen, has been really, really supportive and has been very encouraging for our women of color writers. And now that I'm, entering my last semester at this school, we've been thinking about training the next set of co-editors in chief, and that process of starting to train them and starting to mentor them and introduce them to the process and watch them fall in love with the job and watch them fall in love with the leadership and recognize their own skills. Because I think, we always sort of diminish ourselves and think that we aren't good enough, but it's empowering to sort of see your juniors start to actually take hold of their incredible capacities as writers and as editors. And so for me and my co-editor, that's been a joy to watch amidst all of this hate and the hardship that we've had to deal with. It's been quite a beautiful thing to also watch these same women that have had to deal with getting hate and doxing also realize their incredible power as writers and communicators.
So much like Sanjna, I'm very project oriented. So one thing that's rewarding is I love marking off on my checklist. I have a big list of things. Every day it seems to grow longer, of things that I need to do at the county, things that need to get done, things I need to look into. And being able to mark that off is great. But what's always really exciting to me, especially in the relatively homogeneous population of Saratoga County, is being able to say something to someone in government at the county, or even at the state or federal level, and say, have you thought about this? And they go, what? That's never been brought up before. I feel it's because of being able to listen to other groups and other people and other populations that have experiences that maybe I share and maybe I don't. But being able to say, one of the first things I did is I talked to our Child Protective Services officers, and I said, what are we doing for secondary trauma for these people? We have turnover because the job is really hard and they're leaving every 6 months. What are we doing? And heard a lot of what? Why would we do that? Talking about in the pandemic about flexible work schedules and how maybe it's not just because you have a child, but maybe you're taking care of a parent, maybe you're taking care of a partner, maybe you have physical or mental health issues that you need to take care of, that schedule is easier. Those are things that haven't been brought up, and just hearing someone go, wait, what? That's always really exciting to me, because that means that someone else is on the start of their journey. Maybe it's to leading in that area, maybe it's to looking more and being able to support people in that area, but that's also, it's always super exciting. Occasionally we get fan mail too, which is cool. It's nice to hear someone say thank you for something you did. A lot less fan mail than other types of mail, but that's also, it's positive sometimes. I'm sure Sanja feels the same way with the paper. Some fan mail, some not.
I think, yeah, all of those points are amazing. And I would say most of my experience also comes from just projects at school, things like that. I'm still a junior, so I haven't had a lot of work experience. But what's rewarding to me as like a growing leader is that I, a lot of the times, feel as though I'm totally underqualified. I don't know what's going on. A lot of the times directions can be confusing, and there's just like a strong sense of insecurity around your ability to lead. And so when I, just like go ahead, I'm like, breathe, let go of the self-judgment and actually get things done with the people I'm working with, what's really rewarding to me is that a lot of the times my teammates think that I have it together when I really don't. And all of us are kind of just like in this mess of getting a project done. And when we do get it done, we all realize we're all leaders in our own way that are able to bring our differences, put our insecurities aside, and actually come together to get projects done. And that to me builds my confidence. And I take that with me to the next project I work on, where I tend to go through the same exact list of, you know, self-doubt and insecurity. But again, being a leader, it's all about the process of growing. Like I think someone else was saying, we can't be perfect all the time. We always have to, you know, like let go of that self-critique. I think as women too, it's a lot of, especially if you're working in more male-dominated fields, you think that just by the fact that you are a woman, you are not as qualified, or it appears as though men tend to be more confident in certain like fields of area. For example, I've felt that way a lot in economics. I'm not confident in my math knowledge whatsoever, but I'm nodding with Esther because she is in my economics class. I think that, yeah, what's rewarding for sure is just being able to, like I said, I guess I'm rambling now, but yeah, just feel a sense of empowerment through this process of not really knowing what's going on, if that makes any sense. You kind of just like put things together, even if it's at the last minute. And it's another thing you cross off your checklist, as Tara was saying, but it's also another experience that you now have under your belt that you can learn and grow from.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Christina. Thank you guys for sharing your accomplishments, and just, even though you guys are all in different fields, just, you know, pushing past the boundaries. And so, yeah, thank you guys. The next question I have for group 2 is just, for a person looking to make a difference right now on campus and the community at large, where should they start from? What advice would you give them?
I can go to start off, just because this is super important to me, especially after everything that's been going on this year. Coming back, Skidmore feels different, and I feel like there's more of a need to leave Skidmore with something so that it can become like a safer space, a more appropriate space for everyone involved. For people that want to see change, I suggest starting finding a group of people who feel the same way, especially because when you start off like that and you start off with support, and then you want to go higher up, like whether you reach out to large organizations, or for example, you can reach out to Skid News, having a group of people say, like, we feel like this needs to be shown on campus, that creates this sort of community-based thing. And if you feel like you can't find support, I suggest also opening up to different like student leaders on campus already. Like, I know I always think of that hierarchy as or not hierarchy, but like the chain of command almost, that a lot of like club leaders. This our members need to support and say, like,
okay. I don't know, is your Wi-Fi cutting in and out, or is it my Wi-Fi? I'm just wondering.
No, I think it's definitely me.
Okay.
I could also say pretty much, long story short, it just definitely reaching out to friends, reaching out to people, reaching out to student leaders on campus, because then resources.
Oh no, we lost you again.
Yeah, I think you cut out. I'm sorry.
It looks like she's on mute now. Rami, if you do want to write a comment, I'm happy to read it out loud for you if at any point that's a little bit easier given your connection.
I'll just jump in to echo and kind of expand on what Rami was saying. Finding your allies on campus. You know, Rami talked a lot about finding your people, the people that you're going to work with, all super important. But I think it's also important to seek out folks who have knowledge that you don't have as well, right? Like trying to find someone that at Skidmore that maybe has some institutional knowledge that can provide a little background, or someone who really knows the ins and outs of campus, who knows where to go to get things done, and making sure that's somebody that you're comfortable with. You know, I can only speak to this, you know, kind of Skidmore community, but I know it's a really tough time right now in terms of communication with administration and students, but I'm confident that there are people on campus who are there to support and to help work through these things. And even if it's somebody off campus, I think just finding an ally in that process is a really good place to start.
Yeah, and I guess I would ask is how has it changed during COVID? Because typically you're not seeing each other as much in person. So do they, I mean, if you had a particular interest, because I think timing is everything too, right? So if you had a particular interest and the timing just wasn't quite right now, and you might want to wait on that particular issue that you would want to get involved with, but find something else that might be more appropriate timing-wise right now. I think the virtual nature of our lives right now might be somewhat limiting as to how to get involved with things. But I would encourage you to also reach out beyond campus. I mean, you can always get in touch with me. I can put my contact information down here. If you want to get interested in getting involved outside of campus and any kind of issues, I'd be happy to get you in touch with people or issues beyond campus. But I think using each other on this Zoom call right now as resources, and is there any kind of web-based program to match people up with issues on campus? If not, should there be one that's started? Is there any particular headquarter office that you go to on campus that allows students to ask questions just to get resources and to get information? I mean, there used to be student affairs, right? When I was there, I don't know, is that still there? Do you go there? Are professors helpful? Do they still have a list of all the clubs? And is that where students go now to get involved? And how did you get this particular club so active? And I guess I would just go back and sort of, you know, ask you the questions too.
I would also say, at least from the experience I've had and in talking with other people like who are also like club leaders and the likes of that, I think not being afraid to start small, because change is not something that happens overnight. And I think going back to the point Esther made earlier about like imposter syndrome, for example, I think sometimes it's very easy to like diminish the importance of the work like we do as individuals, as club leaders, as like governmental leaders, and so on. Like in comparison to the big picture, sometimes it's really easy to kind of minimize the effect of the little things we do. So more speaking towards the context of Skidmore clubs, for example. So with social movements, with protest, with like raising awareness of issues going on, sometimes it feels like there's very limited things we can do as student leaders in terms of making a change for causes we're all passionate about. So I think just having that acceptance that we're limited in our abilities. I mean, most of us here are coming from the perspectives of being student leaders. We're college students as well. We have all that we have to balance out. So I think having that acceptance, but also not being afraid to use the various platforms and sources we have to speak up for things we're passionate about, like with the goal of making whatever kind of changes we're trying to see.
I like that. I definitely agree with all that has been said so far, because I know we talked about finding your people, and then, you know, finding people who also don't have the same knowledge as you. And I like the Nick said, starting small, just because change is big. I would just say that if you do or are looking to make a difference on campus, make sure whatever you're doing aligns with your passion or something that you're not really gonna let fall through. I think following through would be pretty big, because I know I joined AHA because it created a sense of home for me, and I really wanted to keep that going. And now here I am. I didn't think I don't think I would have thought I would have been president, but I would definitely just say making sure that it aligns with what your passion and something that you'd like to see or follow through or create, have the visions, all just making sense, like Christina said.
Thank you, Esther. And my last question for group one, before we finish, is just what should we be doing on campus as women leaders to create a supportive environment for all of us?
Don't eat our young. Too many times women treat leadership in any role as there can be one at the table. There can be one in this area, there can be one in this department, there can be one at this table. And that's not how it should work. And it's not how it works with men. Men, if they see someone who's interested, they grab a chair, they bring it up, and they force it at the table. We need to be doing that too. There can be, there's a whole women editorial board. Like RBG said, when will there be enough women? When there are 9. No one's ever asked when there were 9 men. No one's ever asked when there was an all-male editorial board. Bring our people with us. If you see someone who's interested and engaged, or who hasn't expressed it, but you see those qualities in them, say, come with me. Let's go. Let's talk about how we can build this. Because until we're building up leadership in women the same way that it's more naturally built with men, we're still going to have all of these same questions. And that's fine to have them, but I want to see more of us bring in and not going, it happens a lot in politics too. This is the woman who is running for office in this place. And you can't have a challenger. You can't have a questioner. You can't go, I'm not sure about that, because that is the person who's been picked. And I'd like to see us move away from that. We can challenge each other in that department to be better and stronger, but we can also build our base and build our support. Also, we won't feel so alone if we have that many people that we're helping to build up and support.
Yeah, I want to echo that 100%. I think that as women leaders, when we get to these positions of power, it's so important to then be changing the systems and working to change the structures from within, now that we have that power. And I think that it's an additional role that men don't have to worry about, but it becomes so important for us to do this just so that women after us can have opportunities that maybe we didn't have. And so on campus, I think that looks like, women assuming club president roles, deliberately changing club charters to look at how inclusion works in the club's charter, and to try and make provisions to include and make women feel like a certain club or a platform is a safe space, and that encourages women's voices and that holds space for them to recognize their fullest leadership potential. I think all clubs should be doing this, and I think that as women in these positions of power, we should be really, really working hard to rally other women to come and join us and to sit at the table with us, like Tara said. And I think this goes beyond just leadership positions. I think in classrooms, this can work in the ways of making sure that we're always recognizing our positionality, like Abby was talking about, and making sure that women of color feel safe and are given the space to speak. And so, when women of color specifically are speaking, to sort of step back and to recognize positionality. But I also think that our power and leadership can come in the forms of recognizing microaggressions in classroom climate. And, as if you're a white person or you're a person with maybe greater privilege, using that privilege to say something and to stand up for women who have maybe less of your privilege. I think it's a tough world, and layered with all of your different intersecting identities, I think that it can be especially challenging for women of color to thrive and to feel safe, most importantly. But I think that recognizing our privilege and recognizing the ways that we perhaps benefit from certain structures and benefit in certain social situations can be so important. And taking the initiative to recognize that and change that and speak up and make sure that at the forefront of these spaces, the safety and the confidence and the comfort of women of color is placed at a high importance is really essential.
Completely. Oh, yeah. Sorry,
You go, Abby.
No, I completely agree with you, Sanjana. And, you know, I think, and just what's been said, like women, we police each other often, which I think really needs to be broken down and stopped. You know, it's because we've been brought up in a world that's heteropatriarchal in so many ways that we've learned to beat each other down and police each other and, you know, reserve one seat at the table and be competitive with each other instead of binding together and working together and uplifting each other's needs. And that's also, like Sanjana said, is just where positionality comes in too, because, you know, white women can oppress other women and do oppress other women very often. And it's vital that we uplift each other and, you know, us white women utilize our positionality to support women of color constantly and be better allies and be better, just not just allyship, but better friends and better supporters for women of color. And I also just think we need more spaces to celebrate and uplift women leaders like what we're doing right here. It's something that's really hard and been really hard in my leadership experience, especially at Skidmore, is always seeing women leaders doing the legwork, but men being at the number one position, and then the women being the number 2s and 3s and 4s and the ones doing the work, but then the man gets all the credit at the top, and then you ask them what they're doing and they're doing nothing. I see it in every level, whether it's the highest level of the college, the highest level of government, whether it's the highest level of a club leader, whatever it is, I see the man at the top and I see the women doing the work. And then you bring up that woman in a space and people below say, who's that? And you're like, yeah, the one who got it done. And it happens so often. So just bringing those names and celebrating those names. And then just continuing to break down the barriers that exist in every microcosm of society, you know, like wage gaps still exist, whether in the town or at Skidmore, regardless, you know, they're there. Tenure blocks for faculty, they're there for women, breaking down those systems. And then when a woman does fight those barriers and get to the top, like Sanjana mentioned, you know, breaking down those systems. If it's in a club and there is a female president, they should be breaking down that system. Once we get to the top, if a woman becomes tenured, they break down the position and bring women up with them. So just continuing to break down those structures that affect all of us.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo, I know that we're out of time now, but exactly what you were saying, Abby, and whatever others were saying as well, is even like on every possible level, even in the smallest kind, where you see like you're either alone or you see another woman alone, whether it's in a classroom, in group work, you know, we are put in uncomfortable positions sometimes, binding together. If it's in a classroom, if it's, you know, like voting, if it's related to like bigger global issues, national issues, we need to bind together and celebrate each other and not be competitive in the sense that we want to bring each other down, but be competitive in the way that we want each other to grow together.
Yes, thank you guys so much for joining us. I definitely learned a lot during this conversation discussion, and I really like the idea of bringing other women to the table and making space for them. That really stuck with me. And so, yeah, I want to thank you guys for the panelists for spending your Saturday with us. We really appreciate it. And just allowing, sharing your experience with your leadership experience with us. So thank you guys so much. And this is the last meeting for the semester. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your Saturday. And yeah, and definitely stay in touch with the club when we have other events. And yeah, that's all I have to say for this discussion. But again, thank you very, very much.